Hi, I'm Angie Veman, and welcome to Totally Clutch. This is the podcast for women like you to find ways to simplify your business and personal life. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted. All right, welcome back to another episode of Totally Clutch, the Clutch Businesses podcast and vlog. I'm your host, Angie Veman with Clutch Businesses, and I'm super excited about our guest today and the topic that we're going to be going over and learning all about. And I'm really excited for you to meet our guest. And I just want to start it out by saying that, many of us started our business because we really love to help people and we love to solve problems for others and maybe even for ourselves a little bit. And that help probably at some point in your business seemed like it required a custom solution for each individual customer or each individual client. And then you probably started to get really tired. If you're anything like me, if you're anything like a lot of the people that I, in my circle, um, and not just tired, but probably really, really tired. So things at some point also probably started to get pretty messy. So when you're doing a custom solution or solving a problem in a custom way, things get pretty exhausting and they get pretty messy because you're kind of recreating the wheel every time. So you're at that point, you're probably not quite sure how you're going to be able to keep going. It's probably, nights, sleepless nights, lots of, working around the clock, not seeing your family, not seeing your friends. And, maybe the money is good, but you can't really sustain a life like that. So either way, something has to give. So you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and really survive and thrive. So Eleanor Meyerhofer she's a super talented web designer and she helps her clients launch their websites. Well, actually, I shouldn't say web designer. I think web designer and maybe web developer, we'll find out. But she helps her clients launch their websites in one day. And she's going to share all about her business, how she, transitioned to that type of work, and some of the results that she's seen as she's been doing it. So, welcome to the show, Eleanor.
Hi, thanks for having me. Glad to be
Yeah,
here.
yeah. And Eleanor is joining us from Germany. So she's just ending her day as we're kind of starting ours. But welcome, welcome. Um, Eleanor, do you want to tell us a bit about your background and kind of how you came to do the work that you're doing and a little bit about the work that you're doing?
Sure. So I am a formally trained graphic designer. I studied design in the 90s, and it was the time when we sort of transitioned into the internet. I remember when I was in school, we were like learning traditional print techniques, but just like the internet was just happening, so I kind of cut my teeth in the Web 1.0 boom. And I went on to work at a big digital agency in Europe, where I worked on really complex web projects. Um, and at first it was fun, but over time it got kind of disillusioning because they were just long, long projects with huge teams, offshore development, and it was really hard to find any kind of sense of accomplishment. So I ultimately quit that job and I actually started a first business, which was an e-commerce business. And I learned a lot there. I learned that it's not the same when you're doing everything yourself. Um, but I did learn a lot about just being a solopreneur in that business. And after I had my child, I was kind of also when I had the other business, I was still kind of contracting. I had a big network in all the agencies here in town. And so I would like pick up contract work. But this time I was sort of really not, I really just wanted to be done with working at agencies and those types of projects. And I wanted to start another business. And I did what I know how to do, which is web design. And I had been doing Squarespace sites. So I wouldn't really classify myself as a developer. I know CSS and can do things, but I can't like code a site from scratch. So I had done Squarespace sites for friends and family, and it was so easy and fun. It's like web design was fun again. And I thought, well, maybe I could just start a little web design business. Um, and that's how my current business was born. And Once I got into that, I realized I was finding kind of the same struggles that I experienced working with big clients at an agency, which is that things go on and on and on. Um, there's a lot of scope creep. It's hard to get the client to give you the things you need to bring the website live. And so I discovered the whole concept of productized services. And I thought, what could I do in a day? And to be totally transparent, I don't do the website in a day. The session is with a day. It actually, I start um, like a couple days before. I like get everything blocked out and figure out what my design concept is. And sometimes I tell people I need to get the bad ideas out first. So I don't show up to that day with nothing, but I show up with, um, at the minimum, a finished homepage and the rest of the site blocked out. Um, and what I found about this model was that um, it's just really helpful and clarifying for finding the right kind, or let's say the kind of client I enjoy working with, because I am very efficient and like to work fast. And clients often use the word relieved when we're finished. Like, I think they've just got this whole mental load of this website project and they don't know where to start, and that somebody's giving them a framework and a process. Like, literally, I have a CRM set up on my site, so when after a sales call they can just go on the site and book, and it starts this whole workflow of like, hi, today what you're going to do is write down where your domain is hosted, and if it's not, you go here and get a hosting. What's your objective? What are the 1 to 3 things you want people to do on your site? Today you're going to write your web copy. Here's some prompts. This is what should go on your homepage. It's just like they don't have eh, they have to provide the information that goes into the site, but they don't have to think, kind of. It's like the whole framework is laid out for them. So by the time we get to the day of the website and I've taken all the ingredients and made up this website, um, and all they have to do is kind of like, oh, this is move this here, or maybe that text goes here. It takes a weight off their shoulders. And, having a deadline is very great for driving decisions. So that's also helpful. But basically, that's the process.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds incredible. I mean, I'm a huge fan. And I guess just to put it into context for people, I know a lot of people listening probably have put together a website at some point, whether they did it themselves or worked with a designer or developer. Can you though just provide some context on like what's the length of time that a traditional website development process takes, or what does it entail, I guess?
It really depends. So I know some designers will do things in like 3 weeks. Some will do 3 months. The difference is that you have in the kind of thing that I'm offering, you have a fixed scope. So it's like 5 pages and a mini visual brand. That is what you're getting. So in a traditional project, you say, well, what are you trying to do? What do you need? And it's like, well, I like for one client I had, they are they're lawyers, but they're selling these kind of personal development workshops targeted towards lawyers. So I set up the basis of a system where they can make their workshops, like people can book and purchase them online. Um, and I just said, look, I'm going to set up the structure for you, and then you can add it on your own. I'll show you how to do it. So if that had been a traditional site, we would have had like a lot of calls about what they want. Then we would have said, okay, now we got to plan out all your workshops. Now I'm going to make every product listing for you. And they wanted a blog. It's like, okay, let's put back up your blog catalog with 20 posts. And, maybe you want this other thing. You kind of make a bigger site. And then you kind of would say, okay, I'm going to show you some wireframes. And I'm of the mind, like, you don't need wireframes. You really don't need those, especially now with these site builders. It's like, I know people that still like to work that way. I don't. It's like, let's just go straight to the
Yeah.
site. I find that a completely unnecessary step. But if you're on this bigger project, I think what it comes down to is it's going to sound weird, but it's a lack of confidence in delivering your service. Like if you feel you need to have the client approve every step of the way, everything you do, then you're
Mhm.
going to have this big blown out thing that's going to go, it's just going to just keep expanding and expanding. Some people need to work that way, and I am not disparaging that way of working. But I think for a certain kind of person, it's like, let's just get this thing done.
Yeah,
So,
and I think
yeah.
there's one thing that is popping to mind to me as you're talking about this is, and this is something that I am aware of in my business too, is that there's an element of you're doing a lot of the hard work on the front end.
Mhm.
So you know what questions to ask, you
Yeah.
know, and your background is actually really helpful too, I think, in the sense of, you have some project management or
Yeah.
like experience. And so you you can go in with an understanding
Mhm.
of what they need
Mhm.
at a surface level, and maybe just ask some clarifying questions
Yeah.
to make sure that you understand it correctly. But I think a lot of times projects take a while because not only are you not only are you giving them a finished product or a finished service at some point in the process, you're also, a lot of times, service-based businesses or service-oriented businesses are having to kind of take their clients along like a discovery journey
Mhm.
where they're trying to figure out what they want and trying to
Yeah.
figure out what they want it to look like and all of those types of things. And you're drawing that out of them, not along the way. You're drawing that out of them right at the beginning so
Yeah.
that all of that information can fuel the work that you do together.
Mhm. Mhm. And again, like the kind of client this tends to attract is the one that's like, I just need a website yesterday.
Yeah.
So, and I, like I said, I'm very frank about that in the sales process. Like
Mhm.
if you want, this to be a process of like really fine tuning and finding the perfect blue and deliberating over everything, it's not for you. It's just
Yeah.
not that kind of um, project.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that. I think that's something too that I just want to draw attention to and, kind of like praise you for, is that that's amazing that you are really direct and really upfront about the service, because I think a lot of us kind of get into this mindset of well, I don't know what drives it in every person, right?
Mhm.
But we get on those sales calls, we get in front of a client, they start asking us certain things, or the conversation starts going in a certain direction that's different than what we
Mhm.
normally offer. And somehow we feel compelled oftentimes to go in that direction with them, knowing either it's not something that we focus on,
Mhm.
knowing that right, like it's not something that interests us, but we feel like we have to go there with them. And I think
Yeah.
it's amazing that you're just like, no, this is what it is. It serves a very specific purpose. And if we start to deviate from that, it kind of it breaks things a bit.
Yeah.
And in the end, they're probably going to end up being really disappointed, whereas if you just stick with the model
Yeah.
that you've built, they're like happy as a clam at the end of it.
Yeah. And I think 2 points from a business owner perspective. For me, it was like I didn't wanna build a business for myself that I hated working in.
Yeah.
It was like, if I cannot do these things where I'm just like, "You need to give me your content and let's have another meeting," I would go nuts.
Yeah.
And, from the other perspective of what it really is, I always used to think about a niche as like an industry, but I realize what this is really about is is niching on the dimension of scope, on the dimension of the platform I use, on the dimension of what kind of person I'm serving and what kind of, it's not even a psychographic. It's just like temperament rather.
Yeah.
But it's a niche. So not in the kind of traditional way we would think of a niche, but once I do totally believe that once you have that niche, it just makes everything easy because it's like, oh, I don't do that.
Yeah.
But it took me a long time to get it that this is I just always thought like a niche is you do websites for dentists,
Right.
but there's a lot of ways to configure a niche.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. And I mean, again, I just have to throw out that, I end up in these situations myself that even so you focus on Squarespace and I can see myself in not to harp on this, but I could see myself in a conversation with somebody that like I clearly state I do Squarespace websites and then, they start talking about, I don't know,
WordPress.
WordPress or
Yeah.
something. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's sure, we can try that. So I love that it's like, this is it. It's
Well, that
awesome.
was an evolution because at the beginning, I did do some WordPress work, or I had that offer because I've worked in WordPress. I like WordPress for some things, but ultimately I do think it's hard for it can be difficult for non-technical people to
Oh my
use, and
gosh, so
I
hard.
like my clients to be able to manage their site without me.
Yeah,
Um, so I did do one project, and I had a friend, a colleague rather, and she wasn't a big on the design side, but she was a WordPress person. So I partnered with her on that, and it worked okay. But I realized after that project, this will not work because my process is so I can only be fast in one platform. Like I
yeah.
really like Shopify, but I would have
Hmm.
to design a whole separate process, and I would lose all the efficiencies.
Right.
So it's a risk though. Like, I am aware of this long term. When you work like I'm on Squarespace Circle and I see all the beta features they release, and sometimes there's things I think like, there's the market is always dynamic and it's like, if you tie yourself to a platform, you kind of live and die by whatever that platform does. But for now,
Sure.
I think it'll be fine for the next 18
Yeah.
months.
Totally. Yeah, they're not going
So
anywhere anytime
yeah,
soon. And, you do have the flexibility of if
yeah,
Squarespace just isn't cutting it, you can, redevelop those processes for
yeah,
another platform.
yeah,
So, yeah, I think it's really, really great. Um, do you want to walk us through? So, I guess the idea of this conversation, one is
yeah,
to say, this is what you're
mhm,
offering is an amazing business for business owners,
yeah,
like to utilize for themselves in terms
mhm,
of if they need a website, this is a
mhm,
great way to get that done.
mhm,
But I think it's also an interesting conversation because so many of us have businesses that seem like they can only be one-on-one or retainer based
mhm,
or things basically, again, that
yeah,
customized
yeah,
idea, but that's what we think, but there are a ton of opportunities in everybody's service-based business
yeah,
to do exactly what you did, where they productize it and make
yeah,
it easier on themselves, make it easier on their teams, make it
mhm,
easier on their customers. Do you want to share just kind of how you created the process, how
yeah.
you created the actual, or like came to the product itself, and then built that?
Sure. There's a few components. So the first thing was really figuring out the scope of what I could do in a fixed time. And like I said, I don't show up on the day with nothing. There is work ahead of that. And there's also a kickoff call. So it was like, what could I do? And then price it accordingly, but deliver it in a certain time where I'm actually interfacing with the client. So it was more like, what can I realistically do that's valuable, that has an impact? And I think whatever kind of business you offer, you can just think like, how can I kind of slice and dice what I do? So that was pretty straightforward in my case, and I'm sure in a lot of businesses, you can always kind of say like, well, I could do this in a day, or half a day. And there is a slight distinction, I think, between people have like day long intensives where
Hmm.
it's like, what do you want to do? And I'll do it all day, or do it for this amount of time and focus all on you. Um, to this more kind of fixed time, fixed scope model where you might have a little work on the upfront, uh, you know, a day or two or whatever, um, in the time that you're not interacting with a client. But the impact is so big that you have like a finished product that you can price it accordingly.
Hmm.
Um, so that's one thing. So the first thing is just like figuring out what you can deliver in a fixed time that is like valuable. Um, and then a lot of it, to be honest, is your is the behind the scenes process. Like with I mentioned, a lot of the work for me was figuring out my CRM. So I use a
Mhm.
tool called Dubsado. Probably
Oh, yeah.
people here are familiar with
Mhm.
it. And Dubsado, I have a love-hate relationship with
Same.
Dubsado. It's really powerful. It can do so much, but I just feel like it's like not the best piece of software that's intuitive or consistent to use. So I regularly have consultants help me with that. But it was really just figuring out, I wanted this thing to be so automated. So I think you have to figure out, like, have your process really tight so you're not, managing meetings. I mean, I'll just tell you just what I use. So I used Dubsado for booking. So a client can book and there's a workflow triggered so they get all the emails and all the forms they need to fill out before we have our day together. I have videos in there guiding them through to do things. So you have to kind of like, if you need to empower your client before the intensive the day, you got to figure out how you do that. Um, and then the billing, everything's in there. It's just like the button gets pressed, the process rolls. I do not, unless it's a different time zone, I don't have to touch anything. It goes in the calendars. It's done.
Mhm.
And that is really critical to make sure you're not like doing all this administrative stuff to manage this on the side. And then on the actual day, I mean, this is kind of service dependent, but like I use Asana, and I just know there's like these 25 tasks we're going to do.
Yeah.
And I just boom, boom, move them into done, done, done. And it's again, it might not work that way for every type of service, but it's more just thinking about like, how can you take a slice of it and deliver it in a fixed amount of time? And it's
Yeah.
also nice to, my prices are there in, 100 pixel type on my website. So there's no pricing conversation. It's like sometimes I'm amazed that people are like, how much is it again? I'm like, I have now
Yeah.
no scroll 25. I don't, it's like on the top and the bottom of my sales page. So for me, I just like, we don't have to have the pricing conversation. It's like, I know that people come to me are already qualified. If it's not in their budget, I'm not going to have a conversation with them. And it just makes everything unbelievably easy.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is like music to my ears because this is the way that I think about things. This is the way that, I try to encourage my clients to think about things too. And one thing that I just want to point out again is, this, and I'm not a psychologist. I'm going to venture to guess though, that this comes from, being people pleasers,
Mhm.
that, the what I love is that you have a fixed day. So
Mhm.
all of those automations in Dubsado work because they schedule their appointment. You know that the work is going to be done at the end of that day that they've scheduled, and the workflows can progress from
Mhm.
like they trigger off of themselves. There's literally nothing that is required of you other than building the website. And if but you wouldn't have that flexibility, or not, that's not flexibility. You wouldn't
Mhm.
have that ability if you were like, oh, it's a day, but you know what, we didn't really, you wanted to do this, so let's work on it a little bit tomorrow,
Yeah.
or let's look at it again next week and see. Like, as you start to enter into those things, it creeps on your time, it creeps on
Mhm.
your energy, it challenges your team, because
Mhm.
all of these beautiful processes that you've built out kind of just fall away, and
Yeah.
people are scrambling to pick up the pieces. And that's not to say, I think this is an important distinction too, that this isn't to say that you should that your processes should rule over what your clients and
Yeah.
customers need, but that the two of those things should be a part of the conversation,
Yeah.
because like your clients get a better result if you stick to those things. And
Yeah.
so I think I just want to encourage everybody that, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Obviously in some cases it does, or it might be, have to, but there is the ability for you to find a way to bridge those two things and provide something that fuels you, that allows you to thrive and allows your clients to thrive. And oftentimes people, like, they crumble under too many choices, too many
Yeah,
options, too much
yeah,
flexibility,
yeah.
right?
That's really it, and I think, one of the things I learned when I was still at an agency and had to manage more junior people is, especially creatives, there's kind of 2 types, like, people that say, like, "Oh, process is gonna just stifle my
Yeah.
creativity and da da da." But what I saw time and time again is, like, the process totally enables creativity because you
Yeah.
are not spinning your wheels trying to reinvent the wheel every time you just wanna get started with a project.
Mhm.
And it's in a lot of ways, I find very liberating. And that's not to say that you can't break out of it. So I'm notified every time a client fills out a form. And if I, see they're not making progress or, I can go in and say, you might want to shorten this a little bit. I am monitoring things. It's not
Right.
like, I don't see them till the day and I don't care.
Right.
And in some cases, I have sometimes a client will come to me and um, they will not they want to get branding photography, but they haven't done it yet. And
Mhm.
so I will, I don't mind stepping in and saying, like, I have some guidance about how to prepare for a branded shoot. And I'll say, look, you should do these 2 things first because that will determine this. So I'll go in and say, like, I'll move the assignment
Sure.
around photography first and say, like, okay, ignore these 2. So, but that's a process you can work within. You don't have to scramble. So
Mhm.
it's just better for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Um, let's see. I'm trying to think. I mean, honestly, I feel like you gave so much amazing information right off the bat. But I guess I'm curious if there's any like key things, and you've already kind of touched on this a bit, but like if somebody was considering doing this,
Mhm.
what would be some advice that you would give them of things to look for, like opportunities within their business, or like basically what's the most important thing, I guess, to somebody considering doing this?
I would say, try it out first with
Mm.
either a trusted client that you have, a repeat client. When I started this, a family member came to me and she needed a website and she was an academic, and I didn't want to charge her full client rates, but I also just did not have the bandwidth to do a free website project. So I said, look, I'm trying this new model. And she said, "Oh, sounds great to me. I really don't want to spend any time on this whole website thing." And we did it and it went really well. And that was just like, that showed me, even though intellectually I was like, this should work, I don't have doubts. It was good to just run it through and see, yeah, this totally works.
Yeah.
And that, your confidence in delivering things will just build and build and build. And um, I can't tell you how much clients love it. And because it filters for a certain kind of person that will be more amenable to it.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's what I would say. Test it out and then just do it.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I mean, it tests it out for yourself. It also tests it out. We've actually had a lot of people on the show in the last year that have talked about, the importance of asking your clients, asking
Mhm.
your customers instead of just, you know, locked in your office, creating these products, creating these
Mhm.
services that you think people need, actually
Yeah.
reaching out and making sure that they do need them. And so I love that that also again creates that bridge of like, what do they need, and also does what they need work for you?
Yeah.
It's yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Eleanor, how can people work with you if they are interested in finding out more?
They can just go to my website at eleanormeyerhofer.com.
Okay. And we'll include that in the any of the listings or the posts that we have. So great. Well, Eleanor, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing this, and thank you for taking the leap and doing something that is changing not just your life but your clients' lives. I think it's really incredible.
Well, thanks. It was a delight.
Yeah, thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted. Rate and review this podcast and share it with all of your friends. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you're leaving with some great things that can help you move from hustle to flow, because I believe in you and your business. Until next time.